Welcome everyone to the first GDSC Tech Talk for this session. And tonight we're talking to Daniel, who's a tech and programming writer at a large tech company, about how he got into this field and how he changed career from a completely different field into tech and computer science. So let's just get started. And I guess, Daniel, if you'd like to introduce what kind of work you do now and what your current job title is, that would be great.
Yeah. So, I'm Daniel Nelson. Thanks for inviting me to the event. I appreciate it. Just getting started here. What is my current title and job? I'm, as was mentioned, a technical writer for a cloud services provider. It is a FANG company or manga company. I'm not really sure of what the acronym is anymore now that Facebook has rebranded to Meta. It is one of the big five. I've been working in industry, just like the tech industry in general, for about 7 years. My specialties are programming and technical document writing for AI and ML services. So the day-to-day of my job, it really is working on documentation for cloud services and software packages. That involves writing a lot of code samples and like sample applications. That's sort of the day-to-day, but there's a lot that goes into it beyond that. And in the broader scope of my role, I also do like a lot of data analysis, data science, cloud permissions and security management, and some project management as well.
So what are the typical projects that you work on?
Yeah, so so typically my day-to-day looks, I generally start off with like some priority setting, and if there's any urgent items, I attend to those first. I guess is that generally covers stuff like documentation and instructional content for like API parameters, inputs, outputs, technical explanations of our products, best practices for service usage, communicating security and monitoring strategies, that sort of stuff. And as mentioned, beyond that, I do data analytics, data science, content strategy. And so I'm also just spend a lot of my time brainstorming like customer experience improvement initiatives.
So what would you say that you enjoy working on the most? What are the high points of your job?
Sure. Yeah, so in terms of what I enjoy the most, I think there's probably two things that I kind of value the most about my current position. The first is just the act of trying to anticipate customer needs and delivering on those materials is actually quite rewarding. There's a myriad of different potential content delivery strategies and focus areas for us when creating docs. And my job is sort of to determine the optimal method of communication. So I need to remain driven by metrics, and that's good because I tend to like digging into data and sort of putting puzzle pieces together. So this ends up actually being pretty rewarding for me. Beyond that, I really just appreciate the amount of autonomy I'm given in my current position, as long as I'm delivering on the things that are actually expected of me. I'm free and encouraged to actually spend a lot of my otherwise free time thinking about various strategies to enhance the overall quality of our docs and the efficiency of our organization as a whole. I find that pretty empowering. It also keeps things from getting too stale, working on one project at a time. And I guess related to that, just the flexibility I have in my role. I get to choose the best methods of communicating with customers and communicating the proper information to customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds really great that you have so much autonomy and flexibility, and the job really encourages that sort of creativity. What would you say were sort of the challenges and greatest obstacles that you faced?
Yeah. So the main thing is honestly just the sheer breadth of the things that I'm expected to manage. There's there's 1,000 different processes and tools I might have to engage with depending on what needs updating where. Whether that's in the API or reference or the limits or security best practices. So just that sheer breadth can feel a bit overwhelming at times. My organization does so much, and it has so many different services that you're constantly having to learn about new technical concepts and devices. But that's also really rewarding, as previously mentioned. So the other thing I think is just having to collaborate with a lot of different stakeholders for things like technical review. Getting the kind of feedback I need can be somewhat challenging, especially when it comes to mining data for metrics.
Yeah, it sounds like, as in many fields, it's really important to sort of be open to keep learning new stuff, especially in computer science, because just every year, so there's so many transformations in the field. It's really like good for people who always want to be learning new tools. And well, as I know, Daniel actually majored in communications and writing, but then decided to go into tech. So do you want to talk a little bit about that and sort of your non-traditional career path?
Yeah, totally. Happy to address that. So, yeah, as Ophelia mentioned, I do have a non-traditional career path. My undergraduate degree was actually in writing and communications. I initially wanted to work as a Hollywood screenwriter, hence the degree. I think I sort of dodged a bullet there, to be honest with you, if you've been paying attention to the news out of that industry at all. But it was on my way out of college that I discovered computer science, and I just totally fell in love with it during my last few semesters of college. It's kind of too late to change my major at that point, so I really just forced myself to upskill and build on the base that I had learned in college. I just augmented that with a variety of online courses and degree programs. While I was doing this, I was working as a freelance writer to pay the bills during that time, a freelance journalist. And I eventually gained enough technical proficiency to start doing like freelance or contract data science and app development. So my portfolio ended up consisting of a mix of data science projects and writing samples about those technical topics that I was dealing with. And this really ended up making like the role of the tech writer a pretty natural fit for me.
Yeah, it's so nice how you could like combine your passions together to make a career out of it. I think computer science lets people sort of really easily combine their other interests with a more lucrative field, perhaps even more than most other disciplines. So, for you, what inspired you the most to make the career change into tech?
Yeah, great question, and generally just the opportunities that it unlocked for me. And I mean that in the sense of job opportunities, clearly, but also other senses of opportunities. Um, so I mean other opportunities like using data science to help make sense out of the world, or using your programming skills to develop an app that helps you in your day-to-day life. Fundamentally, it's just understanding, manipulating, and using data just gives you so much more influence and uh, influence over your life and the world around you. And that's kind of what I mean by opportunities. So for me, I think I really just saw programming and data science as a natural evolution to what I already appreciated about language and writing, which is to say, analyzing and parsing information. Just data science, especially, is in some sense just another form of like storytelling. So it really, yeah, felt like kind of a natural evolution there.
Yeah, I think people often draw the parallels between language and linguistics and programming, but sort of when you first start programming, maybe that isn't as obvious to start.
Yeah,
But those parallels are there. So I think that, yeah, definitely if you're someone who enjoys languages and storytelling, then tech sort of doesn't have to be as sort of dry or scary as it seems, because there are a lot of similarities. And so, what were the main steps that you took to gain the hard skills sort of needed to transition into the tech field?
sure. So as I mentioned, I did already have some exposure to computer science in college. I just kind of needed to figure out a way to augment those abilities and then pivot around my existing skill set. So, uh, like I said, I took some online courses and read up on programming books. My first couple of jobs after graduating college was writing as a freelance journalist for science and tech sites. So I was able to pivot that into um, actually like writing coding tutorials and writing articles about like tech and AI topics, to sort of break in that way. And since I was already working on these like tutorials and things, I eventually ended up writing several books teaching programming skills, at least one in Python, and then one on like data visualization techniques, using a variety of different programming languages.
Yeah, so what would you say were the biggest challenges when trying to break into the tech industry?
I think the main thing was just like finding the opportunities to do work that was meaningful and impactful. finding opportunities to collaborate with others on projects. It's so easy to just become kind of siloed and uh, just work on your own things that you happen to have some weird affinity for, but might not be extremely practical, or might not uh, actually demonstrate a lot of value. So actually collaborating with other people on projects that demonstrate value was like the most difficult thing. That started to happen to me for me as I proved myself as like a freelancer, and then as I found these gigs writing programming tutorials for tech and programming websites. There was a guy who ran one of the websites, and he was happy to work with me on a few coding and data analysis projects that I could legitimately say, yeah, like I've done analytics for work. And after that, it became so much easier to actually sell myself as like a consultant developer or data analyst, which I did until I started a full-time position as a tech writer. So it's really hard to find those first few opportunities, but once you get them, things become a lot easier. So like definitely take advantage of any internship opportunities that you have open to you. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, so what sort of advice would you sort of give to people now who are wanting to make a similar career change, given the recent developments in AI and the development and popularity of LLMs like Bard or ChatGPT? Like, obviously that has had a big impact on sort of programming and software development. So what advice in that context would you give to future career changes?
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, the big thing changing the field right now is definitely AI, and especially LLMs. And I certainly think that they're going to continue to change the role. I personally anticipate that a lot of software documentation is probably going to end up auto-generated soon, and the role of like a tech writer is going to be more about like conceptualizing and executing on technical content strategy. Like I mentioned, that's actually a lot of what I do already, but like focusing on the data and thinking about process improvements. But I generally expect that to become an even larger part of the job as the minute-to-minute writing becomes less necessary. So for that reason, like if you're thinking about going into that as a job, start to learn how to think holistically, systemically, focus on the big picture, understand the larger trends in technical content creation. That would be my advice.
So, like, yeah, I guess that the main takeaway seems to be that you just always have to keep your eye out for new developments and sort of keep track of those to not be left behind. So when you were starting out as a freelancer, getting your first sort of projects and contracts, what kinds of projects are a good idea for people to have in their portfolio, would you say?
Yeah. So this is going to be kind of an obvious answer, but it's worth highlighting. Projects that demonstrate value, and I guess I distinguish value and skill, because anyone can fill their portfolio with kind of toy projects that, yes, demonstrate skill, but are that demonstrate technical proficiency and know-how, but might not actually be practical, or might not actually be, the kind of thing employers are looking for. So it's much more impressive if you can create something that actually people end up actually buying or using. In my case, these were programming tutorials that actually got traction on social media, as well as the coding books I wrote that ended up selling fairly well and garnering positive reviews. So yeah, I'd say on that kind of idea, really look to collaborate with others and solve problems. You can do this by like contributing to open source development. Generally, what hiring managers want to see is that you have the ability to problem solve and collaborate with others. So doing that kind of stuff fulfills both of those criteria. You also just be kind of thinking about what are the actual problems and opportunities you can solve as you consider your portfolio projects. Work on something with actual real world applications. In my case, there was I worked on a data visualization and analysis tool. Obviously, like if you work at a company that deals with a lot of text data, you need an efficient way of parsing and analyzing that data to make decisions. So I created a Jupyter notebook that takes in raw data frames and then lets users customize parameters to easily probe their data frames for valuable insights. I guess the final thing I'd say is just, even at this stage, kind of allow yourself to be customer driven. Imagine yourself a customer and work backwards based off of their use case. Like you can do your market research, think about a problem that an actual person, a genuine customer of yours might have. Think about their use case, build out a customer portfolio, and then work backwards from there. That'll enable you to toss about potential solutions, do like pro-con lists for them, do your effort estimation, and then build, execute, iterate.
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's a really good point, that to sort of stay on top of business development, even if it's just a local business, that's like a restaurant or selling jewelry or like a local paper or something that could be improved in some way using tech. Because as Angela said in the chat, I think there's too many portfolios which just show these sort of blueprints of products which are like a calculator app or a to-do list application or a note-taking app, and I don't know, they're just like, I think those are just too easy to sort of make if you just look at a tutorial and code along, basically. And I do think that it's a good point that, like, if you can show how valuable your code or your project can be to an actual client or company, even if it's a small one, then that puts it in that kind of more useful context. It shows you've done the requirements engineering and like mapped out the user journey rather than just following along with a tutorial. And those aspects are just as important as the code a lot of the time. So would you say, Daniel, that portfolios should focus on breadth of skills or just depth in one or two areas that you specialize in?
False dichotomy is my answer. I think that this depends on what you're looking for, but in my personal opinion, I'd say both. Basically, what I mean by that is have a handful of projects that really demonstrate your core strengths and skills. Make those obviously like the centerpiece. Really flesh those out, polish them up. Those are really important, of course, but it's good to have a few other projects that round out your portfolio. I've done mentoring and interviewing for companies in the past, and when I'm looking at somebody's resume and when I'm thinking about what projects this person could end up doing, I'm looking for, yes, those core competencies, but it always makes somebody stand out when they have special interests and skills that they can attest to. It shows curiosity and the ability to adapt to new things.
Yeah, so I guess, it also depends on the depth and the size of your project, but overall, how many projects would you say are like an ideal target to go for to showcase your skills?
Yeah, so you will hear competing arguments, but in my opinion, like 6 to 8. Lead with your best projects. Like I said, it's if you can't hit like 8, do not put filler in there. I think it's better to have fewer projects that are finished and high quality rather than a bunch of like weaker projects that are have like obvious
Unfinished.
holes. So 6 to 8 is a good number to have. 4 or 5 that really showcase those core strengths, like I was saying, and then like a couple that show your more diverse interests.
So, apart from projects, what extra stuff would you say is like a good idea to add to your portfolio? Like soft skills and so on.
Yeah. Basically just that. Soft skills. Obviously, like I'm saying, there's plenty of ways to demonstrate value outside of your coding projects. Something that demonstrates your work ethic, your ability to communicate well with others, teamwork and collaboration, problem solving and critical thinking. Like I said, being customer driven and thinking about actual use cases will kind of help display those soft skills, because it requires it requires like communication and empathy to put yourself in the shoes of a customer and say, what problem am I having? What would I want to have developed for me? So that's good. And then, of course, leadership skills. If you can demonstrate those are always great. Volunteer opportunities, those typically go down well. It demonstrates conscientiousness. It demonstrates work ethic and civic mindedness.
And obviously, I think everybody's heard of GitHub, but where else should people publish their portfolios to maximize their visibility?
Well, no surprises there. GitHub is the predominant place people will go to see coding projects and portfolios. But if you can design your own website for it, that's one of the best options. That's basically just an additional project. You can point people to. That said, if you're going to do that, I'd still have a GitHub repo. And then be sure to stick both of those links on your resume or like your LinkedIn. LinkedIn's great for that kind of stuff. Also, I would say, like, don't just post your code and run. If you can start a blog, like if you can do some blogging about your projects, that again shows that ability to communicate how you've accomplished your goals. It demonstrates your thinking processes and what kind of challenges you navigated and how you navigated them. That gives you further credibility. It's also attractive to recruiters who, will be looking for like technical topics and buzzwords. Yeah. but they won't necessarily have the technical skills to interpret your project by themselves. So you can kind of appeal to them by doing some writing about it.
Yeah, so everyone who's doing the UoL BSc, I guess that shows that all this practice we're having, writing such long reports for every code project, is going to really come in handy as well. So it's not just like for the markers, but this is really also training a real world skill. So obviously everyone's heard about recent tech layoffs and how software dev has changed because of the changes due to AI. So generally, given these changes, what advice do you have to people looking to get into the industry now or in the next year?
Sure. So I think I need to start off by like issuing a disclaimer. If this question is like, how do you future-proof your career against AI? I don't know, and more to the point, I don't think anyone else knows either. This field changes so fast and so rapidly. I don't think anyone can predict exactly where it's headed and what effects it'll have on jobs. And I think that anyone who claims to is who claims to like have the advice you need to ensure your job is either not understanding the scope of the issue or is selling you something. I just wanted to state that because like yeah, I don't want to pretend to have like the magic bullet that's going to solve this for you. I kind of wouldn't want that responsibility. But that said, I can give you some advice about what works for me and what I've been doing. So what I've found the most helpful is just to kind of think bigger picture, to kind of go up a level in abstraction. You know, the trends in AI point to lower level, less complex tasks being automated first. So you can kind of make yourself useful by getting better at dealing with the more abstract ones. Like, here's a concrete example. If you're working on an app development and writing specific functions, start thinking systemically, start beginning to understand the use cases and leverage points and the needs of your application and how you can tweak and optimize that system. Your like, what is your ability to spot potential failure points for your app like? How do you resolve those failures? What sorts of capabilities and capacities can your app benefit from? This helps you please your customer, but also until artificial general intelligence is invented, being able to look at the big picture and optimize your system accordingly is probably your greatest strength. Personally, I've been delving into like project management skills and systems thinking concepts, and I found them very helpful in my ability to lead initiatives and identify areas of improvement. Also, yeah, you know, don't like fear AI. Just get practice using these tools. Let them supercharge you where possible. They will free you up to think about these bigger picture things. And yeah, keep a focus on soft skills. They're much more important than a lot of people give them credit for. I know for like nerdy introvert types like myself, it's really easy to just focus on like the technical skills and let the social skills atrophy, but they are important. I've been part of interview loops and I've met people who are extremely knowledgeable and extremely skilled, but I wouldn't recommend them for hire because they don't demonstrate conscientiousness. They're completely unable to be interested in anything except what is appealing to them at that moment, and they lack the ability to be a team player. So those are huge considerations in hiring.
Yeah, I think like this point about how even with ChatGPT and stuff like that, how you need to develop a more abstract conceptual understanding of your project or your app is truly important, because even when I've played around with writing apps or games and use ChatGPT to find bugs or something like that just to test it out, even with that tool, it's pretty impossible to use that to actually create a good app or website or project unless you understand the whole mechanism of how everything fits together and how everything works. These tools definitely can't replace everything. You can't create a great software product just typing in prompts into Bard or ChatGPT when you don't actually understand how all the bits of code fit together. So yeah, it's definitely not going to replace all kinds of software development right now, I don't think. So zeroing in, focusing in more on what writers can do with ChatGPT and LLMs. So do you want to talk a bit about emerging trends in this area?
Sure. Yeah. So just wanted to focus a bit on the current state of AI and large language models. NLP is my specialty, so I wanted to talk about emerging trends here. So the excuse me. So the first thing I want you to consider is ask yourself, what can I do with an LLM? And the answer to that is basically anything you can conceive of. I mean, certainly there are practical limitations, but as Wittgenstein said, language is a universal medium. You can represent just about any idea, any concept through text. So if you can express an idea linguistically, there's a good chance you can manipulate the data for that using an LLM. And they're more to the point, they're not just useful for generating text data. You can also some of the newer models have integrations with like computer vision systems, multimodal models. ChatGPT does this right now. I believe Anthropic is just about to release the capability for Claude. But yeah, you can do image analysis with it, for example. Like here's an example. I basically just took a picture of a leaky faucet, submitted that to ChatGPT. Was like, how do I fix this? And it actually diagnosed the problem. Yeah, it's a leaky faucet, and then gave me like a step-by-step series of instructions to figure out and then solve that problem. So yeah, hugely powerful. I definitely play around with the image capabilities. And even if the chat client doesn't support image manipulation yet, like a workaround is to use some kind of computer vision system to generate labels for the images and then pass those labels as natural language inputs into a chat program. So, for instance, you could do like label extraction with something like OpenCV, and then have Claude or ChatGPT generate a caption for an image based off of the text containing the recognized objects. And obviously that has applications in like automatic image captioning for the purposes of accessibility, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people associate these models just with text-based tasks, when it's important to remember that anything can really be represented as, well, just sort of binary data, and it's not just like language prompts that they can be used with.
Mhm.
So a really interesting thing we were talking about also the other day is the application of LLMs in the field of robotics. I don't know if anyone's interested in robotics here, but I found this really fascinating stuff. So do you just want to touch briefly about that?
Yeah, sure. So, robotics. So, yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can integrate like an LLM and robotics platform. Uh, One is kind of setting up the capacity for for your robotics, your platform, your robots to actually take natural language as an input and give it, instructions, move left, move right. And there's been some interesting work in this area. There's a video, I think Boston Dynamics doing this with one of their with one of their robots. I forget which model it was, but the other way to do it, is to leverage an LLM or leverage Chat GPT to generate the code based off of like a natural language prompt, and then you just kick out those instructions to the robot. And there's a blog post from Microsoft demonstrating this capability. I urge you to look into it, but yeah, they use it to like uh, generate the logic that'll like get a robotic arm to manipulate some blocks, and to move like a little droid around the kitchen. Extremely interesting stuff.
Yeah, it really is. And I guess another big sort of field of sort of employment opportunities now regarding AI and LLMs, which I think you're quite keen to talk about, is red teaming, which is sort of a kind of white hat hacking. So do you want to say a few words about that in the context of these large language models?
Sure. Yeah. So, if you take a look at that links to that robotics paper, on that blog page, Microsoft says explicitly, we emphasize, that the outputs from ChatGPT are not meant to be deployed directly on robots without careful analysis, and they call out the safety risks inherent in doing this. And that's important because it's a little bit scary, because like you're now giving an LLM, which we do know, it exhibit weird, unpredictable behavior on occasion. You're giving it a method of interacting with the physical world, and so being able to have these safety considerations, being able to probe these LLMs for potential failure modes is really important. So that brings me to my next point, which is red teaming. So it's a cybersecurity concept initially, but it's kind of evolved. And in the context of LLMs, it basically refers to giving prompts to an LLM that are intended to break the model or get it to exhibit undesired, but potentially harmful behavior. You're kind of poking at the model to discover hacks or jailbreaks, and then reporting those findings to engineering teams who can take them into account and design countermeasures. This is important for, excuse me, and here's just like a couple of bypasses that people have found. One is to say you role play with the LLM, and you assign it a role, like here, someone tells it to act as their deceased grandmother who works in a napalm factory, and then it spits out information about how to create napalm. So yeah, that's a version of the sort of prompting you might do to kind of stress test these models and probe them for vulnerabilities or exploits. So, like, why is this important? Well, just from like a social responsibility standpoint, you want to ensure that your AI models and systems aren't generating harmful or offensive content. And then, of course, there's like AI safety concerns, ensuring your models can't give out information which could be used to harm others. And finally, insufficient red teaming can also open you up to reputational or legal harm just from like a kind of self-interest perspective. So what kind of techniques are we talking about in terms of red teaming? So the primary one that I mentioned is prompt attacks. That's manipulating the outputs of an AI system by really carefully crafting your inputs. But there are other versions of this. One is like training data extraction. You can actually get access to the training data that has been used for a model. This takes advantage of the fact that most models, most LLMs are just next token predictors. So they're more likely to predict, to generate things based off of things they've seen before. And if a model has seen a training example too many times, you exploit this, you get it to generate samples of those training data. So you just like generate a whole bunch of text, and then you can search through it and compare it with like known databases to see what data it's been using for training, and then you can kind of reverse engineer things from there. So there's also adversarial attacks, which is like injecting harmful information into the model to make it misbehave. In this image here on the right, this comes from a paper where essentially it's a computer vision model built to classify images. It correctly detects that it's a bee in the image with the flower and the bee. For whatever reason, though, you paste a little image of a traffic signal in there, and it interprets it as a fly. And so this is a safety issue because, like, obviously we don't want images of stop signs with stickers, like fooling object detection systems being fed to autonomous driving systems. But this process can also help people actually introspect on the model and address some of the black box training problems. The black box issue of neural networks, you can actually kind of it elucidates some of how the model is actually thinking about these issues. So it's like, okay, there's something there's some sort of feature, maybe it's like the circles present in the image that this is making it think about like a fly. So you can actually use this for interpretability as well. And then data poisoning is just like a specific type of adversarial attack. You actually introduce corrupted data into the training data, and this is a problem if you're training on live data. Back in 2016, Microsoft had a very embarrassing incident with the AI chatbot Tay, who was tweeting, and it was exposed to a whole bunch of like inappropriate language and topics, and then it just continued to regurgitate that. So those are some of the strategies you would use to red team. And like, what do all these things have in common? Well, what they have in common is some form of natural language manipulation. And if you're a particularly gifted writer, if you're skilled with natural language, I would urge you to explore methods of getting involved in red teaming, especially if you're interested in like cybersecurity or safety. If you're interested in if you're skilled in writing effective prompts and you're creative and analytical, you can directly contribute to AI safety this way. I believe at the moment OpenAI actually has a place for you to file tickets for inappropriate generations from ChatGPT. And that's about it.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was also interesting and encouraging, particularly for people who, well, are really into writing or programming and worried that AI is going to replace everything. This is a really good way of showing how it's created new opportunities too. So we'll move to the Q&A section of the talk now. So the first question from Rico was, do you use machine learning for your data analytics?
Yeah, totally. I mean, a lot of in terms of like categorizing and classifying text data, yeah, a lot of them are just the classic machine learning algorithms, not like deep neural networks or anything, but just things like k-means clustering, decision trees, random forests, things like that. I think those are time tested and continue to work well.
Yeah, it's really sort of important to still understand those basic algorithms and how they work, and not just sort of be enticed by overkill by putting everything into a deep or convolutional neural network, when sometimes sort of these simple classifiers or clustering algorithms are just better suited to more simple data sets. So Francis and Alexa asked, what helped improve your writing skills? Where did you receive feedback from?
Yeah, various places, I guess, is the answer. So a lot of it, just at first, it was like just learning based off of comments I would get on my blog posts and my articles. Just helpful comments by people. eager to provide feedback. When I got into more professional roles, I did have a relationship with an editor, and those are there's that collaboration again. Invaluable relationships certainly for augmenting and helping me hone my writing skills.
Okay, great. So Alexa also asked, how do you determine in how much detail to write and how explicit do you have to be? I suppose that's for the documentation and stuff.
Totally. Yeah. Well, like I was saying, it goes back to knowing your audience. And that's part of why we do so much, why I do so much data analytics, trying to get a handle on these things, because you do have a ton of people visiting your websites and visiting and interacting with your content who might be at different skill levels and of different persuasions, different technical persuasions. Generally, I think you kind of try and write for a pretty general technical audience. That is to say, try and technical writing should ideally be at like high school level or below. You kind of the better you are at understanding and communicating concepts, the simpler you can do it. But it's as specific as you need to be, and no more generally. Yeah, but fundamentally, it all just comes down to your audience.
And Sebastian asked regarding sort of not doing the boring tutorial style portfolio project and creating something more meaningful and valuable in the business context. We've already said that employers won't be impressed with blueprint projects, but sometimes it's hard to get an innovative idea. Do you have any ideas on how to get these ideas for the portfolio projects?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. So I guess there's a couple of different strategies that I would use. This is, as always, the $1 million question. If you can design a system that actually determines at any given moment what the hottest areas of the markets are, you're probably going to be like a millionaire tomorrow. But for me personally, I just ask myself, what problems am I struggling with? Because what are the chances that this is a problem unique to you? Like, pretty little. And then so start there, and then just do basic market research. Are there other attempts to solve this problem out there? If so, how successful are they? Are there areas you can improve on? Start talking to people one-on-one. Start talking to your friends, your coworkers, other people. Just see what they're struggling with, and and then think about how you can potentially solve their issues.
And someone asked, have you ever kept a diary?
I have at one point. It's something I try to engage with, but it always ends up falling by the wayside. I guess I don't keep I variously keep a collection of Google documents just filled with my notes on different topics, and musings and project ideas. Like just constantly thinking about project ideas. I guess I do keep like a little notebook on me generally that I fill full with project ideas, but not a diary as such these days.
And I think the last question, the Q&A, was, what is the concept of LLM regarding natural language processing? Sorry, I'm not quite clear what.
Yeah.
Who asked that question? Let's just. Mohammed, do you want to maybe clarify what you meant by that in the chat or in the Q&A? I'll just ask another question I just thought of spontaneously during the talk, which was regarding like the feedback you get on your blog or on your writing when you're just starting out. How do you have any like tips, I suppose, for how to react to like negative or critical feedback? And have you ever struggled with that? What is your strategy to get yourself back up and working again?
Yeah. So this is a great question. This is something I used to struggle with quite a bit during the earlier parts of my career and my writing. It's not as much of a problem these days, but so I mean in the beginning, yeah, I would get negative comments, and they were always a bit demoralizing. But you know, I think there is a process of sort of putting your ego aside, and taking the criticism to heart. And for me, that's just realizing like, okay, I'm a writer. Communication is my deal. Most people are not writers. Most people are not super versed at communicating things effectively. So very often negative comments will be gesturing at something people are frustrated with, but they might not actually be like specifically the thing that people are frustrated with. So I try and reframe it as something more constructive, I guess. And it's just been throughout a process of doing that for so long that like I've developed a pretty thick skin at this point. Like I don't, my writing is in the service of the customer. It's in the service of our products. So it's easier for me to divorce myself from it. Fundamentally, I am not my writing, and it's not an attack on me when I get negative criticism about it. It's a criticism of the product and the experience. And yeah, I can improve on that always, but it's not fundamentally it's nothing to do with me, like me as a person.
Okay, thank you so much for this, and I hope this was helpful to everyone who attended. I can't see any more questions in the chat or in the Q&A, so I guess we can wrap up for tonight. And thank you, Daniel, and thank you to everyone who came to this talk, and hope to see you in some of the next GDSC events coming up next. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Just going to close the talk.